Hey, fifth grade, happy Friday. This is Miss Gibson coming to you with your reading for today. So, of course, you guys should have the reading packet out for Friday, May 15th. You guys should have the text out on page 53 because we're going into chapter 9 today. And then, of course, the Google document for the stop and jots and the exit ticket. So if you don't have all three tabs out right now, please get them all out as we follow along for this video. All right, let's get started. Chapter 8 was long. That's why we broke it into a couple days so you guys can get all the information from it as we get into more of Bud's life. So now let's get into chapter 9. So we are going to read chapter 9 today, and we'll be tracking how like the order of events of a plot helps support thoughts and reflections a character uses to grow and develop. So we are going to be looking at how past chapters are now helping Bud develop into his character and his thought process in chapter 9 today. So we'll be taking a closer look at Bud's thoughts, reflections, and how he is growing and developing as a character based off of this support from events that have already happened chronologically in the plot within the book so far. So make sure we are paying close attention to how the events in the story continue to support his growth. All right. So the first thing we're going to do, of course, is read the first couple of pages together, and we are going to experience how this scene builds on a previous scene in the book. All right, so we're going to follow along as I read aloud, and then you're going to get into the first stop and jot. So everyone should be on page 53, which is chapter 9, and we're going to read to the bottom of page 55 together. So let's get on over to page 53, beginning of chapter 9. I got to the food line in plenty of time, but my pretend family wasn't anywhere around. I had to eat by myself without the brown sugar. After I was through, I went back to the library and sat under my tree to wait for it to open. I couldn't stop thinking about Deza Malone and her dimple. How could her father find them now? Finally, I saw people going into the library. The librarian was there again. I said, "Good morning, ma'am." "Good morning, young man. Could I please borrow a pencil and a piece of paper and see that book about how far one city is from another again, ma'am?" She said, "Of course you may. You know, after I went home last night, I finally recognized you. Didn't you and your mother used to come in here a long time ago?" "Yes, ma'am," she said. "And if I remember correctly, you and your mother had quite different tastes in books. I remember your mother used to like mysteries and fairy tales. Isn't that so? Man, I couldn't believe she remembered that. And you're the little fellow who used to come in all the time and ask Miss Hale for books about the Civil War, aren't you?" "Yes, ma'am," she said. "I thought so." She handed me the pencil and paper and the cities book, then said, "And when you're done with the book, bring it back, and I have something special for you." She had a huge smile on her face. I said, "Thank you, ma'am," but I didn't get too excited because I know the kind of things librarians think are special. I went over to a table and found Flint and Grand Rapids in the lines of the book. I looked where the two lines met and it said 120. Wow, that was going to be a good little walk. Next, I wrote down 120, then divided it by 5. That came up to 24. That meant I have to walk for 24 hours to reach Rapids, one whole day and one whole night. I figured it would be easier to do the night part first, so I decided to stick around the library until it got dark, then head for Grand Rapids. I wrote down all the names of all the cities I'd have to pass through to get there: Owasso, Ovid, St. John's, Ionia, and Lowell. I put the paper in my pocket. When I took the city's book back to the librarian, when I took the city's book back, the librarian was still smiling. She said, "I'll bet you've been dying to know what your surprise is, haven't you?" I lied. "Yes, ma'am." She reached under her desk and pulled out a thick, thick book called The Pictorial History of the War Between the States. Wow, that book was gigantic. "Thank you very much, ma'am," she said. "Enjoy, enjoy, enjoy." I took the book back to my table. I didn't want to tell her that I wasn't really interested in history. It was just that the best gory pictures in the world came from the Civil War, and this book was full of them. It really was a great book. There's another thing that's strange about the library. It seems like time flies when you're in one. One second, I was opening the first book of the page, hearing the cracking sound the pages make, smelling all the page powder and reading what battle the picture on that page was from. And the next second, the librarian was standing over me saying, I am very impressed. You really devoured that book, didn't you? But it's time to close now. You may start up again first thing tomorrow. I couldn't believe it. It happened again. I spent the whole day reading. Her words snapped the spell that was on me, and my stomach started growling right away. I was going to be too late for the mission. When she was walking me to the door, the librarian stopped at her desk and said, Now I know that knowledge is a food, but I couldn't help noticing you never went to eat. You must be very hungry. She handed me a paper bag and gave me another smile. Thank you, ma'am, she said. She smiled. See you tomorrow. I said, Yes, ma'am. Thank you for everything. I went back under the Christmas tree and got my suitcase. But this time tomorrow, I'll be looking at the face of the man who had to be my father. I started eating the cheese sandwich the librarian gave me. And then headed out for Grand Rapids. It's funny how ideas are, in a lot of ways, they're just like seeds. Both of them start real small and then whoop, zoop, swoop. Before you could say Jack Robinson, they've gone and grown a lot bigger than you ever thought they could. If you look at a great big maple tree, it's hard to believe it started out as a little seed. I mean, if you pick up one of those maple tree seeds and turn it over a couple times in your hand, there's no way your brain will buy that this little thing can grow up into something so big you have to bend your neck back just to see the top of it. Something so big that you can hang a swing on it, or build a tree house in it, or drive a car into it and kill yourself and any bad luck passengers that might be taking a ride with you. Ideas are a lot like that. That's what the idea of Herman E. Calloway being my father started as. Something so teeny that if I hadn't paid it no mind, it would have blown away with the first good puff of wind. But now here it was, so big and important and spread out. All right, now that we're done with the beginning pages of chapter 9, you guys are going to get into the first stop and jot of explaining how the library scene in chapter 9 builds on the library scene Bud has in chapter 7 with the new librarian. So, of course, you guys need to use the pages that we just read from chapter 9, so from 53 to 55. And then I'm just going to scroll up to chapter 7 really quick, and that's going to be page 30. So you're going to get to page 30 and you're going to just scan the pages and see what can help you out really quick. And then after that, see how and remember how this is building on these pages. Like what is he learning in chapter 9 about what's going on with his life and then his new journey, and how is that building on the certain specific information he was getting in chapter 7. I advise you guys to go back and reread page 33 in chapter 7 because it will definitely help you out and guide you to how these two scenes are connecting to each other right now. So, of course, use the initial pages of chapter 9 and loop back to page 33 in chapter 7 to help you out. Make sure when you are answering your stop and jot, you are including information from chapter 7 to help you answer this. So you should clearly have some type of information from chapter 7 in your answer, and then how chapter 9 has been building on top of that. So go ahead and pause the video and get started on your first stop and jot. All right, so welcome back from doing stop and jot number 1, which is explaining how the library scene in chapter 9 builds on the library scene Bud has in chapter 7. So first, let's go to chapter 7 and again refresh our memories of what was going on with that so we can understand how chapter 9 builds on this scene right here. So again, you guys should have been to page 33 on chapter 7. Okay. So, if we were here, it he is now given a big map of Michigan and a couple of states that were next to it. And it says, "We're here." She pointed to the spot that said Flint, and Chicago is here in Illinois. They look pretty close, but I know how tricky maps can be. Shucks, they can put the whole world on one page on a map. So I said, how long will it take for someone to walk that far? She said, "Oh dear, quite a while, I'm afraid. Let's check the distance." So, this is where chapter 9 is going to come into the fact where we are looking at distance, okay? It says she reached under the desk and pulled out another thick book called Standard Highway Mileage Guide and turned it to a page that had a million numbers and city names on it. She showed me how to find Chicago on the line that was running across the page and Flint on the line that was running down the page, and then took to look at the number that was writ where the two of them joined up. It said 270. She pulled a pencil out and said, "Okay, this is how one figures the amount of time required to walk to Chicago. Now," she pulled a third book out. Shucks, this is one of the bad things about talking to librarians. I asked one question and already she had us digging through three different books. She thumbed through the book until she said, "Aha, it says here that the average male human get is 5 miles an hour. Okay, assuming that you could cover 5 miles an hour, all we have to do is divide 270 by 5." She did it and said 54 hours, much too long to be practical. No, I'm afraid you'll simply have to wait until Mrs. Rollins comes back to Flint for a visit. So right here in this moment, this is when he figures out that Flint to Chicago, Illinois was 54 miles, well, 54 hours based off of this calculation she did. She took the amount of miles and divided it by 5, and that's how she got to 54 hours. Now, if we scroll down to chapter 9, this is where he is trying to figure out how to get to Grand Rapids because that's where he believes his father is at. So it says here on page 54, I went over to a table and found Flint and Grand Rapids in the lines of the book. I looked where the two lines met and it said 120. Wow, that was going to be a good little walk. Next, I wrote down 120, then divided it by 5. That came up to 24. That meant I'd have to walk for 24 hours to reach Grand Rapids, one whole day and one whole night. So, this is how right now chapter 9 is building on chapter 7 and the events. And this is getting into Bud's thought process because he is trying to figure out how he's going to meet his father, in a sense, right now in this text. And he's figuring out the timeline to get to his father from Flint to Grand Rapids because that's where he thinks this man is. And then, of course, he writes down all the cities. So he's using his knowledge from chapter 7 that he learned from that new librarian, and then he is putting it to use to figure out how he can get from Flint to Grand Rapids in order to meet Herman E. Calloway. All right. So this is how chapters right now are building on each other in a sense, and this is helping us figure out how these chronological events are helping the plot in the story because clearly this is getting to how Bud is going to try to get to where his father is at. Now, at the end of the section, so we read to bottom of page 55, it talks about how it's funny how ideas are a lot of ways, in a lot of ways, are just like seeds. What does Bud mean by this line? Correct. He is seeing that as soon as an idea is planted in your head and it can become as big as it possibly can without you even realizing it because you keep fueling that seed, right? So that's just like the same as a seed when you plant. You have this little tiny seed, and then afterwards you're getting into something that's blossoming into something bigger because you keep harvesting that seed, soiling that seed, watering that seed to make sure that it grows. And that's what he's doing right now in the terms of the idea of Herman E. Calloway being his father. So it may have some started off as something so small, and now the idea of actually trying to meet him has become so big. So you guys are going to get into the remaining part of this chapter to see how this idea actually fostered into Bud's head. When you are done, you are going to get into the second stop and jot of explain how the idea of Herman E. Calloway being Bud's father has blossomed into something real. So make sure to build upon how the structure of the chapter in the book overall helps support the reflection that Bud undergoes in this chapter about Herman E. Calloway. So make sure you are getting into this last piece to finish up the chapter independently, getting into that second stop and jot, and trying to put forth that understanding of how the idea of Hermione Calloway being Bud's father has become something so big. So go ahead and pause the video and get started on reading the rest of the chapter and getting into the second stop. All right, so welcome back from answering stop and jot number 2 of explaining how the idea of Herman E. Calloway being Bud's father has blossomed into something real. So let's get into the text to see how this idea blossomed and how he's literally keeping it afloat right now to push him to go to finally try to meet him. Now, it says here, and it talks about this guy who's basic or some this boy in the foster home who's bullying him at this moment. So he's saying how Billy stole a nickel from somewhere and held it up so the buffalo on it was looking out at us. And then it goes, and then he goes, Billy, my man, go ahead and bet this little no mama fool that he don't know who his daddy is. Then I have another nickel to bang around in your pocket with. So they're betting right now that the boys in the home don't know who their parents are. Bud is like, I know my mom, and guess what? I know who my dad is too. And he's saying that my daddy plays a giant fiddle, and his name is Herman E. Calloway. So remember, Bud never met his father and he only knows and wonders of his father because of how his mom kept the flyers. And then he states, and with those words that I didn't even mean to say, that little seed of an idea started growing. So this was the seed that got planted into Bud's thoughts and mindset right now that actually I do know who my father is and he's Hermione Calloway. But oh yeah, actually in the back of his mind, he realized that I never met this man. I never did anything. I don't know him, never met him in my life, never seen him in my life. All I have are these flyers. So he just thinks that because his mom had them and she cried over them, that it's something so significant to his mom that it has to be his father too. So this is how this idea has now blossomed into something real because now he actually wants to go and find Herman E. Calloway because he planted out how to get to Grand Rapids where he thinks he is and figure out where and how he's going to see him. So this is how that small seed has now fostered into something big for Bud and now he's just on the way to figure out and find out Harmony Calloway and try to get to know his father. Secret code time. Your secret code for today is Tiger. So you are going to get into that exit ticket and do the questions for today for the word tiger. Again, is your secret word. Make sure you are going through the questions for the exit ticket, going back to the text for the exit ticket. You guys should all be acing these exit tickets at this point. You guys have the text in front of you. This is why we have the multiple tabs out. You could go back, refresh your memory with the chapter, go from page 1 of the chapter to the end of the chapter, reread if you have to. Push yourself to always get 100 on these because this will definitely look great for your reading scores and showing that you are doing the absolute more than just the bare minimum of trying to show us that you are still working hard during this time. All right. So enjoy your Friday. I hope you guys are enjoying this book as much as I am and enjoy your weekend to the best of your abilities. And of course, stay safe. All right. Have a great weekend and I'll see you guys and talk to you guys on Monday. Bye.